Hello, everyone. Welcome to the end of day 2, pre-JNUC party, which will be great. I am Morgan, I'm your session host, and I'm here to introduce the actual talent. So we have Deanna Betcher and Kaylee Morris from Toast here to talk about admin rights in a jam, safeguarding devices by revoking admin rights with Jamf Connect.
Hey, everybody. We wanted to start off by saying this is going to be process heavy, project management heavy, how we deployed our solution and worked with our end users. So if you do want a more technical talk, Mike next door is giving one on the exact same topic. And he might be sending people over here as well. We will not be offended if you do want to dip out. So that being said, we are here today to talk about admin rights in a Jamf. And my name is Kaylee Morris. I'm the IT systems manager at Toast. I have about 15 years of experience in IT, a little bit of financial industry background and technology industry background, and I've coupled the two by coming to Toast, which is a fintech company. I have a few teams that roll up to me at Toast. One of them is the client platform engineering team, which is responsible for the success of this project.
And I'm Deanna Betcher, Senior Systems Engineer on Toast's Client Platform Engineering team. I've been at Toast for 3 years now and in the IT space for well over a decade. I have experience in a number of environments, implementing device management platforms in a number of different industries. As mentioned earlier, we'll be presenting our journey through implementing a privilege management solution across our environment at Toast using Jamf Connect. We'll touch on our environment, the problem we were facing, our planning and solution phases, some roadblocks we encountered, our final implementation, and some key takeaways.
So first up, I'm going to give a quick overview of our environment as it pertains to this project directly and privileged elevation with Jamf. So our first is our environment overview. Our industry is fintech. We're a publicly traded company which sets us up for SOX, SOC, and PCI compliance regulations. Our macOS device footprint is about 6,000, and our engineering team size is not 2, but 1, because we only had 1 at the time of this project, and you're looking at her. Up next is our related tech stack, again, just as it relates to this project specifically. So up first, we have, there we go. For IDP, we have Okta, the comms tools that we use for our users, Slack and Gmail to do our communication campaigns. ITSM, we have ServiceNow for all of our help desk support, ticket intake, requests, and issues. And then our MDMs, Jamf for Mac, Intune for Windows. And over here, our device security posture. We have password management set up. Again, we've got multiple policies. We've got a lot of different regulations, SOC, SOC, PCI. We've got a solid OS patching process. We've got Jamf and Nudge to help with that. We've got an automated lock wipe solution set up for all those lost stolen devices and out of compliance. And we have multiple EDR tools for management and monitoring. But our local admin rights were open to everyone in the company, which was a glaring issue in a pretty much secure environment otherwise. So up next, we're going to explore our problem of having open admin rights in our environment. So having these local admin rights enabled opened up a lot of unnecessary security, financial, and compliance risks. We also had a cyber insurance policy that had a pretty strong no admin rights should be open on any of your devices. So not only was it a security risk, but it was also a cost issue now because we could lose cyber and security insurance, which is a massive issue. And because of our policy scheduling, we only had 6 months to find a solution and correct it.
Let's move on to planning a solution for privilege management. First, we had to plan how we were going to remediate the risk. We're in IT and aren't strangers to a critical enterprise-wide urgent ask, and we're professionals, so we took it all in stride.
It's going to be fun.
Totally fine. Nothing is going to go wrong. 6,000 users need to change their way of life. It's going to be totally fine.
Totally fine.
So obviously at this point we were a little flustered and our heads were spinning. We did build out a project team in a relatively quick timeline and started sorting through things. Our team consisted of project manager, senior engineer, security analyst, InfoSec leader, IT leader, CISO, and also included stakeholders from our lines of business from R&D, finance, engineering, and sales. We gathered our thoughts down on paper, so to speak. What does the impact look like? How do our users actually use their administrative rights today? What products do we have today or need to purchase to fulfill this ask? And what is our budget and lead time to implement? At a high level, this is what our plan looked like. Our project plan was broken down to 5 major and, of course, expedited phases. We knew going in before we had a solution selected that we would need to be flexible in many ways, so we need to break the project down into phases, and this would allow us to plan and communicate effectively to our users and leadership. First, discovery, we had to quickly narrow down vendors and tools that were available to us on our tight timeline. It was also important that we took the time to truly understand the impact to our environment. Not only our users, but how things would change for our global support team. During the pilot, we made an effort to be more hands-on with our users to understand their use cases and why they, quote unquote, needed administrative rights. During this phase, it was also apparent we needed to implement a more robust patching strategy across the estate. This would be crucial to removing friction for users and our continued enhancement to Toast security posture. Next, during our training phase, we knew we needed to provide our frontline support team with information to allow them to provide a cohesive support experience for our users. While making the changes simple in context, it is a change in workflow and device experience for both end users and support teams. So going through the pilot, we took notes around potential pain points for end users that helped inform our training plan for our global support team. In the communications phase, we needed to understand how to best inform our users. To get the word out, we have standard tools available to most, so Slack, email, and various internal platforms for hosting documentation. The big thing was understanding the cadence for sending out the communications that made sense through various channels available to us. Even then, it was still difficult to fully capture everybody's attention in the time we needed. So at that point, we realized it was important to keep an open line of communication with the leadership team so that they could even assist with disseminating the information for us. And for our final deployment, we decided on a slow rollout relative to the timeline of our project, of course. And we would so-called scream test our solution and give our help desk some room for troubleshooting new tickets and allowing our engineering team time to identify any workflow issues with the changes we were making.
There we go. So once we completed our project planning, it was time to get started with discovery on our path to solutioning. So in IT and CorpSec, I know that relationship can be tough sometimes, but we do share a common theme, which is user-first mentality. And our mantra between us is secure and productive. We never want to over-secure an environment so it impedes productivity for our users. Thus, started a larger discussion around what our core guiding principles would be when we built this solution. And so the core guiding principles we decided on were prioritize security, number 1. Make sure the solution we implement actually solves the issue of revoking admin rights. Next, user-centric design, very important. Make sure that we're implementing a secure solution that puts our users first. With low or no impact to their productivity, we don't want users to have to wait around for admin rights, request it with a lengthy, difficult process. And so we want to make it as few steps as possible for them, which then led us to efficiency and automation. We've got a really lean team. We don't have 1,000 admins to click and add access and revoke it to track the work being done, so it needs to be automated. And then finally, cyber insurance. We got to keep it. So whatever we do needs to follow all of those requirements in order to pass that audit. And now we're going to move on to the requirements we use to scope some solutions. First up was cost. We were lucky in that our budget was very flexible. And it was flexible mostly because we knew that spending big cost up front would pay off in the end and for a long-term solution. Effort and complexity. Again, we have a small team, so we need to consider the effort to learning a new tool, implementing, configuring, managing it on the back end. And then risk and impact. Again, low impact to our users, to our support teams, to our environment, low risk to our downstream tools, user experience, and their productivity. And then timeline, very tight. Again, we've only got 6 months to find a vendor, test it out, build the solution, and deploy it. So once we had our criteria, we started looking at vendors. We had demos, budget discussions, submitted ratings and comparisons, discussed complexity and IT systems impacts and impact to our global support teams, submitted more proposals, and finally we had 2 vendors that we ranked against each other. We will call them Tool A and Tool B. Unfortunately, they both showed over $100K in cost year over year. Some of them had heavy agents that we would have to install on an actual device, so deployment was messy. There were new consoles that we had to learn, and you see they ranked moderate to high in all of our criteria, so we were not feeling confident about purchasing a tool and getting it rolled out. Then we spoke to our Jamf account exec, Alyssa in the front row, and she mentioned that Jamf is working on an admin management solution that would be available in Jamf Connect 2.32. And it would have a feature that supported management of privileged elevation for our users. So at this news, we were very excited, threw it in our vendor ranking, and we found, hey, low cost, it's free, we already pay for Jamf Connect today. Low lift, our team already understands the platform, already knows how to configure and deploy it, or there is no deployment because we already have it deployed. Low impact to our users and our IT teams, but just like anything that's too good to be true, we were quickly brought back down to earth.
It's in beta at this point with no set date for release. This is when we inevitably hit our first roadblock, which coincidentally leads us to our next section of roadblocks. Not unexpected, we ran into a few while piloting the feature in Jamf Connect, so we're going to talk through some of those issues and workarounds. The first, it's in beta. So obviously we worked with our Jamf account team and we're able to start an early beta pilot for our users. Thank you for that. We quickly found that it was worth waiting for this feature to make it into a production release rather than seeking out a completely different solution altogether, as the 6-month lead time we originally had would not be needed for purchasing, configuring, and deploying a brand new tool in our environment. We could repurpose this time to test out the new feature while it's in beta and have it ready to go when it's ready for production.
And we sat on a lot of calls with Mike next door, begging and pleading him for a release date, and he was very good at giving us updates on that. We basically also sat down and brainstormed how to roll this out in as seamless, quick way as possible. This included deploying a script that simply downgrades an existing user's elevated account to a standard account alongside the Jamf Connect client upgrade and configuration profile that included the new privilege elevation feature key. We were pretty excited at how simple this was to configure and get deployed out in the end. The second roadblock, while Jamf Connect was widely used in our environment, we did have a segment of users who had not fully migrated over to Jamf Connect manage accounts quite yet. So along with our new Jamf Connect deployment, we also had to push these folks to enroll in Jamf Connect for the first time. This was not without some issues, but we were able to fall back on our communication channels to keep everyone, including frontline support, in the loop. And the final roadblock, in the final stages of our pilot, we managed to start triggering the time tampering flag. This can occur for a few different reasons and was really the only major bug we ran into. Our Jamf support team was responsive and indicated there was an open PI for this issue, but there wasn't really a permanent fix in the works quite yet. So we realized we needed to implement a workaround, and very quickly.
After working with the support team, we understood we needed to find a way to clear the time tampering flag from the Jamf Connect state plist in an ad hoc manner. So we simply published a policy script to Jamf self-service that would clear this flag and just told our users to run it ad hoc as they encountered the issue. And we simply called this script refresh Jamf Connect because we're clever like that. And of course, a permanent fix came a short while later with Jamf Connect version 2.36, and our help desk was very grateful for this update when it occurred.
And that brings us to our key takeaways in project closure. So first up, project closure with Jamf Connect and privilege elevation. We hit our criteria. We closed under timeline, under budget, and we delivered a solution that met all of our requirements. And we passed audit. We still have cybersecurity insurance.
Congrats.
So up next, we're just going to show you what it looks like. A quick click through. So our elevators, our users can elevate in just 3 steps now. So first, they'll select our nice little Toast branded Jamf icon on the top of the screen, and then click Request Admin Privileges. Next, the username and password they need to populate, and not shown here, but we do have this tied to our multi-factor authentication solution, which is Duo today. And then third, we have users log their reason for why they're elevating. This helps us on the back end with a little bit of reporting because there's not a lot of observability in the native tool to do that. So it gives security a little something to work with. And then finally, they're notified that you are now an administrator. And we've got a little timer set right there next to that Toast icon that you have full control over. I think we originally had it at like a 2-hour mark just to roll it out, and then we reduced it down to 20 minutes, and we'll probably reduce it even further in the future. So that's what it looks like as a solution. And next, well, go ahead.
Just a quick video of what this looks like all the way through. Just on the upper right, select the Jamf Connect icon, request your privileges, authenticate, give your reason for elevating, and off you go. Now we'll wrap up with our key takeaways for our project. We knew going in that our execution wouldn't necessarily be perfect, especially due to our time constraints and team size, so we wanted to remain flexible but reinforce the mission was critical to getting over the finish line for this project. It was realized as we went through the motions that the security team would at least like some level of observability as to what users were elevating for and how often. While Jamf Connect does not have a native and centralized way of handling this, it does write back to a log locally on device. And if you happen to use a SIEM, you could ship this off to said SIEM like Splunk. Obviously, giving certain people elevated access is going to result in creative workarounds that those folks find over time, especially given enough time. One of those workarounds is modifying the sudoers files so that they have persistent access on their device. This was obviously a concern on the security side, which again isn't really in scope for Jamf Connect directly. But the solve for our security team was using our EDR tool to monitor the activity going forward. And finally, we knew that we were going to make life a little bit more difficult for our end users, regardless of how we accomplish this ask. So patching and self-service availability of apps was a must, and something even today we're still iterating on.
And with that, we have wrapped our presentation, and we will move on to Q&A.
All right, I'm going to be coming around with the mic so that you all can ask your questions directly, all right?
When you were collecting requirements, did you find, and I guess did you set up when you were implementing, different timetables for different groups? I know our dev teams say that they need at least 8 hours a day so that they don't have to like click on it twice because you know how long it takes.
Yeah, so We sort of considered doing that, but ultimately what we're finding now is if we can kind of target what our devs actually need to elevate for, we're trying to find ways to give them the access to do that, rather than just relying on persistently elevating their user session, or even for an extended period.
If a user's offline, how are they going to MFA for? Oh, they can't.
Yeah, in our case right now, they can't do an offline elevation.
Okay. Everyone's okay with. Okay. And second question: have you guys considered Okta Desktop Sync that I think is possibly coming out or is out with privilege escalation because you already have Okta?
I missed the first part of that question.
Okta Desktop Sync, the app that they're providing now. Have you considered that instead of Jamf Connect? Because looks like they're competing with Jamf Connect, possibly?
We haven't compared the two. We have parts of Okta, but we don't have the full scope of it. So, I know that Okta's a little tricky when you add new SKUs and how much they charge for it. So since this was already a part of our Jamf Connect package, we jumped on this. But that's a good thing to look out for. Thank you.
Have you looked at any integration with ServiceNow as far as workflow, approvals, things of that nature, or are you just trusting your users to say, trusting, right? Yeah, we need it, give it to us. Okay, cool, here it is.
So we can tie this into ServiceNow approvals. We did not go down that path because our criteria was just so simple. It was literally lock users out, and then the only reason we wanted to give them ease of use and access back was to help out our users. But our cybersecurity policy literally just said, block it, so.
You could certainly see it maturing into that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
I don't know how deep into finance Toast is, right? I give people my card, they use your stuff, and it works. Did you have any financial regulations or anything you had to account for in terms of logging or auditable actions?
Financial regulations, you mean in what way, I guess? Do you mean us paying for the tool itself, or what our users are doing?
I guess internal audits who want to review everything, or outside agencies from a regulatory perspective. Do you have any hurdles where they would come in and say, hey, we see that you have this elevation. Maybe it's more relevant to your insurance policy to say, hey, we'll give you this insurance, but we kind of want to know how our users are using it. How did you deal with some of those auditing and logging challenges?
So one thing we're doing right now for audit and evidence providing is kind of like a piecemeal solution. We know when the users are elevating and for the length of time that they have that, so then we can use CrowdStrike to go in, check, monitor what the user did during that time period, take a screenshot, and that's how we can produce evidence. But in auditing, it'll probably be a random sample of, hey, this person elevated, give me their evidence. So that's how we're kind of piecing that together right now.
I've got a question. How do you prevent a user, once they've become root, become super user, from creating more local admins?
At this point, we're kind of relying on our security team to actively monitor for things that fall under device tampering. Yeah.
You could just scope that downgrade policy anytime a machine checks in and is being used by a local account that has admin rights.
Gotcha.
So when your machine takes inventory, it'll flag all the accounts and it'll say whether or not they have admin access.
Here, that we don't feel.
Yeah. So in your JSS, you can look at your local accounts that are on each machine, and you could create a smart group or an advanced search to identify any machines that still have accounts on them that are admin, and then scope those to run that admin downgrade policy.
you. Anyone else have a question? I can run the mic over to you. Yep. Now we have applause to compete with.
You might have mentioned this, but are you feeding the history of escalation to Splunk or something like that?
We would like to start doing that, yeah. We know it's an option for us to be able to start forwarding that stuff from, from the device level.
It's a native option, right? I think they provide that. Jamf provides that integration.
What's that?
Jamf provides that integration from Jamf to Splunk.
I believe
It's a
the
native.
Jamf Pro, yeah.
So it's not necessarily a native option within Jamf Connect, but there is kind of a makeshift option of using an extension attribute to see what's been done, then having the Jamf Pro and Splunk integration bring that into Splunk. There's also the option of using Jamf Protect, of the telemetry option, if that were an option for you guys, of moving all of that information of what's been done on the computer in admin and pushing that to Splunk as well.
Teamwork in here, I love it.
I think there's one in the very back.
Okay, perfect, all right there. Getting my workout in.
I'm not sure it's super relevant with your global footprint, but do you do anything with like a help desk group that is also able to use Jamf Connect to elevate like an admin account to help a user out? Because I know you can add like multiple groups into your configuration.
Our config is actually pretty simple, so we're not isolating like that at this point.
And one all the way up front now.
You guys are making me work for it.
Here we go, Morgan.
Sorry, who was it up here? Oh, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if someone already mentioned it, but maybe this was a question for that session, but is there possible to just, or have you looked into scoping it to particular users rather than just everybody?
So we learned something from Mike recently, who is next door, and Mike Vandeliner. They are looking into creating more custom roles within this, because right now when we elevate, you have access to do anything. And so what they're looking at is like, can they create user groups? Do you have a basic user, somebody that just needs to print or install something? It can be quick. And lumping those into a single profile. That's not there today, but that is something that they're looking at expanding into, which would be super helpful in this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I maybe missed it at the start. How many users did you say were affected in the sense that they all had admin rights? How many people are we talking about?
So we have a fleet of 6,000 macOS devices. Yeah.
Wow.
I was waiting for the question like who screamed the loudest, like nobody.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. How do you convince, maybe convince is the wrong word, how do you negotiate the fact that you're removing admin access for 6,000 people and selling them on this solution? And the second question as a follow-up is, were you able to identify if anybody, devs being devs especially, tried to get around the timer and have it automatically reset after the 20 minutes?
So I can answer the first part of that question, then I mean you could take the second. I think we had something similar, but we did a lot of research up front for this project, and we had to get a lot of buy-in. That was like the trickiest part of this. Turning this on was a week. We had it on, we had it tested, we had it deployed. getting buy-in and convincing everybody that it was going to be okay was much tougher. So we started communicating it out in droves to all of our line of business leaders. We got most of their buy-in, and we sent out a survey to all of our lines of businesses like, hey, you've got admin rights today, do you use it, and why? We had a lot of people go, I think so, maybe. I definitely need it, I know I do, and we're like, but what do you do with it? And then so there was like, we're fintech, we have a massive R&D group. That's the group that we found needed admin rights majority. And then what you were saying earlier, they would like it to have it 8 hours a day. So through those surveys, we were able to like kind of chunk it down to the smallest group that would be the most difficult to work with, and we tested very thoroughly with them. We brought them in on the pilot when it was in beta. We had them talking to our Jamf rep with us. So I think it was like over-communication was our friend there. And we also stressed the reason we were doing it. We weren't doing it just because we hated them. We were doing it because we had some compliance regulations to meet. And then what was the second question? It was about them going back and resetting the timer. We don't have something that blocks it today, but we can track.
Yeah, we kind of left that up to, at the moment, it's kind of up to our security team to tell us whether or not, because they're looking for device tampering with the tools they have available. So if people are doing things like that, we'd hear about it, hopefully.
There was also, on one of the previous slides, we were talking about the sudoers, if you want to mention that again, like how they extended.
Yeah, if somebody, while they elevate their session, just modifies the sudoers file to give themselves persistent access, we'd consider that device tampering at that point, and that's being monitored for.
Yep. Anyone else? Well, for a small consulting fee, we'll come do it at your company too.
And before we close, how can they get in touch with you guys, or how can they stay in contact if they have questions, or what's next?
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
I think on the JNUC app, actually, I don't know if we added our email, or we can put that in there though. I think we can update our profiles on there. So we'll put that info on there, yeah, because we don't have contact info here. But thanks, everyone.